This is James Lupton, and I'm delighted to be joined today with Tony Gale. Tony, how are you, mate?
I'm good, James. How are you?
Good stuff. Yeah, very well, thank you. Very good. I wanted to talk a little bit about your career. I know you've been a very busy man with your book being released very recently. That's entertainment. We'll start there, actually. A friend of mine, Paul Zenon, wrote a book with you. What was that like to not only release a book, but going back when you first started playing and when you turned pro, did you expect to have a career worthy of a book?
Oh, good question. First up, that mate. Well played. I've never been asked that one. No, I didn't really think. Well, when I was starting off, of course not. No, but as I was progressing in football and people were doing books, I'd often been asked, "Do you fancy doing one?" But I never thought it was the right time to do it. And then Paul asked me via a friend of mine, Danny Imray, who was I think Danny's the nephew of Jimmy Tibbs, who Paul done a book for. Do you fancy doing one with Paul? Do you want to meet up with Paul? When I met with Paul, he's a really nice bloke, isn't he? You know, unfortunately, I ain't got a bad word to say about him, but I'd like to. But he's a good lad, and it really it seemed the time because when things are coming to an end, not dying or anything, James. Sorry, I mean, but going through the whole of my career, it was a good time to do a book. Whilst sometimes you do it in the middle, and it's not the same, is it?
No, definitely not. And for yourself to relive some of those memories and some of those games or some of those players you played with, what was that like?
Yeah, it was good, and Paul was forever triggering my memory. Because we had to go through it chronologically, of course, and we had the help of another chap, Stevie Blowers, who was doing all the West Ham stuff. But Paul did the Fulham stuff basically on his own. So if there's any mistakes in there, it's down to Paul. But it was good. He was triggering my memory all the time. And then, of course, when you're going to all your friends and your teammates and family, who Paul was going to as well, they were constantly triggering my memory.
That's it, no, absolutely. Let's go right back to the beginning. Let's go back to Fulham. I mentioned Fulham there a moment ago. First question is, when you was coming through as an apprentice, you was looking at the first team and you had the likes of George Best and Bobby Moore in there the season before you turned professional. What was that like to see stars like that? And obviously, Bobby Moore in your position, somebody I'm sure you looked up to.
Yeah, always looked up to Bobby Moore because simply it was my position, and also he was obviously the 1966 World Cup winning captain. And then you had Georgie Best, who was a footballing maverick, and then footballing genius, I would say. But the other one, the footballing maverick, was Rodney Marsh. So it was quite some upbringing, really. First year apprentice with those boys in and around the team, and then obviously Bestie and Marshy had gone, and Marshy and Morrow retired, and it left Bestie for me to play with. So I actually played in the team alongside George in midfield. So having taken Bobby's place, it was and taking the six shirt at Fulham, of course, it was quite something, quite an act to follow.
Definitely. Did you feel any pressure? You was about what, 16 years old, 17 years old when you stepped in to replace Bobby Moore. What was that like to take that shirt, take that position, and try and fill his boots?
Don't think I really felt pressure because I had the beauty of a manager, Bobby Campbell, who totally believed in me, and all the lads used to say I was teacher's pet or whatever because I was in the team at 16, I was captain at 18, sort of thing. But I think I was teacher's pet because I was pretty good, to be honest, James. Yeah.
What's that like to have that belief from the gaffer at such a young age as well?
Yeah, I mean that's what you need in football when they talk about luck. You need people that believe in you, and I was luckily I had football mentors throughout my life. Really, first at a boys' club with a guy called Teddy Weston. Then I had Ken Craggs as a junior manager, then Bobby Campbell, and then when I went to West Ham, it was John Lyall, and after that, because you're always learning, it was Kenny Dalglish and Ray Arford. So I was really lucky in my life, my footballing career, that I had these mentors that I could always look up to and always believed in me.
Just to touch back on the last point on Moore, Marsh, and Best, what were they like for yourself on the pitch and around the training ground? Things like that? Were they ever pretentious? Did they feel like, oh, we've accomplished what we've accomplished? Was it like a separation from yourself at your age as an apprentice to them? Or were they involved? Were they giving advice? Were they being teachers as well?
Yeah, they were never. They never. I mean, when you play with top players, it's only lesser players mention what they do or what they've done. I don't think I heard Bobby Moore saying, "Oh, well, when I was a 1966 World Cup winning captain, or when I done this with West Ham," or Georgie Best say, when I was the top three players in the world, or Rodney Marsh say, when I was playing for England under Sir Ralph Ramsey. They never ever spoke about themselves. They always had an open mind to youngsters being in and around them, and in three different ways, the guys always had a way of dealing with you as youngsters. Bobby was quiet, but when he spoke, you listened. George was a pretty quiet guy as well, but he was always kind of joking about a bit. But Marshy was the complete prankster and joker. He just took you under his wing, which was brilliant for us. You can imagine 16, 17-year-old kids being taken under the wing of those guys, both on and off the pitch, and being made to be part of their lives, which is it's an incredible thing to say, and look back and think back on it as well. Because my mum and dad, who met them, they couldn't believe it. Because they were sort of a little bit older than them, or around about their age, well, and they were talking to these great players, and they were talking about me as if I was a mate, and I was only a kid. I was like one of their kids, but it was brilliant, James. I couldn't, I'd like to relive it all again. And one thing I would do, because we were apprentices, how much would it be worth? I never put this in a book, actually, that the 6 shirt that Bobby Moore retired in at Fulham, his last ever game, I was an apprentice. The 7 shirt with Georgie Best and the 10 shirt with Rodney Marsh. If you'd have kept them, they gave them kits away at the end of the season to local sides. Whoever picked that up, must be a fortune. You can't imagine it, can you, really? You know what I mean?
Got to be a little gold mine there, little gold mine. In terms of Bobby Moore, again, I mentioned your position. You took over from him, and it's somebody that you looked up to beforehand, as you mentioned, World Cup winning captain, the only English captain to ever win a World Cup. Did he ever give you any advice that stuck with you throughout your whole playing career?
Not actual advice, do this, do that, whatever. But it was a case of the manager saying to me, study, watch, look, learn, and listen. Every move that he makes, and he was impeccable in the way he was dressed off the pitch, the way he was dressed on the pitch, believe it or not, the way he folded his kit up after training, the way he had respect for other people. I was just told to look, learn, and listen. There was little bits like, drop off here and do this there, and when to play offside and when not to play offside when we was in training. But it wouldn't have been, oh yeah, you got to do this, got to do that, do the other. It was more of a case of watching and learning.
Sounds like for yourself the perfect role model.
Yeah, perfect role model. And obviously, I'll never achieve the heights that he got to, but I like to think I'll play football in the same kind of manner.
And you mentioned, obviously, in the first team at 16, captain by 18. Fast forward 1984, £200,000 transfer fee. You go to West Ham, start of a long stint at West Ham. Just tell me what West Ham means to you.
Everything, same as Fulham, really. Fulham was from 12 to 24. West Ham was from 24 to 34, as in age, age spans. 330 games at Fulham, 370 games at West Ham, which culminated in a testimonial. So West Ham means everything. I still do bits and bobs there. I'm still an ambassador on match days at West Ham. Still enjoy that role. Still love the club. Equally, as I do Fulham. Love going to Fulham games when I'm not working on Sky. I just love both clubs. They're very similar, but from both sides of London, different kinds of people that support them. But I think kind of similar clubs in that everybody else kind of likes these clubs. I was so lucky to play for both.
I mentioned earlier on about pressure, stepping in and filling into the boots of Bobby Moore at Fulham. When you moved to West Ham, did you feel any pressure on that sense? Because again, Bobby Moore's such a big figure at West Ham as well.
Well, I was actually replacing Billy Bonds at West Ham, but playing in the role that Moore played at West Ham before, so kind of following on. And after that, it was at Capital Gold Radio with Jonathan Pearce where Moore was. So it was following him in everything he'd done. I jokingly say I think I was better on the radio than him, but not on the pitch. But yeah, I was very conscious of the fact I had to prove myself at West Ham. because I was replacing Billy Bonds, who actually went on to play for another 4 or 5 years, just moved back into a midfield role. But Bonzo was another inspirational figure in my life.
Why is that? What was it about Billy Bonds for yourself?
Well, Billy Bonds was basically a man's man, what I call probably the biggest man's man that I've played with in football. He simply did the best that he could do on a football pitch and did it in training as well, was 100% in everything he did, and then just went home and went off to his family. He didn't want all the side trappings of footballers, even when he was a manager. He was just a guy who played football for what it was, wasn't a show off or cocky or anything like that. He just got on with it and was a terrific player as well. Because he was an hard man, people thought that was him, but he was also a really good footballer.
Just touching on that, talk to me about the differences between playing football in those days with people like that compared to today with the social media era and what it's like with people not fame hungry, but obviously the fame takes over sometimes. What's the differences between now and then?
Probably, I'm glad. Other than the money, obviously they get a fortune now, but probably I prefer to have played then. I think I think people were better then. I think money kind of spoils people at times, and some of the players are a little bit spoilt in the actions that they do. But then I got every sympathy because they don't really have any private life. We did. We could go out, and we didn't have people, doing selfies and asking for everything like that, and messages every 2 minutes, and and Sanso's here, Sanso's there, and immediately you're in somewhere, then someone else knows you're there 100 miles away. Oh, what was you doing last night? And whatever. Oh, there's a picture of you here, and all that. But you had a little bit of a private life, which now I don't really envy them that, because they're being tracked all the time. It's like being permanently on Big Brother, isn't it? Really.
You mentioned as well the financial aspect of it. Obviously, it's a lot more favourable these days. It's absolutely ridiculous money that some footballers are on. Do you think that potentially has hindered some players in terms of being greedy?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. I think there's a lot of players that handle it really well, and respected. They got good people around them, families or agents, but some haven't got particularly good families or agents around them. But I think it's who's around you that really helps you. There's a lot of really good-hearted players out there, and good players. I don't begrudge them their money because it's market forces, isn't it? But it's an astronomical amount of money that they earn now. It's not quite, the general public can't relate to it. Whereas we were on good money, but it was only like, there was other people in the city who was on that kind of money and everything like that. So it's gone through the roof. It's actually gone through the roof. But good luck to them. Good luck to them. But there are hard luck stories when they come out. How they've spent it, I don't know. You couldn't spend it if you tried, could you? But there are hard luck stories when you get the wrong people around you.
No, definitely. Going back to West Ham and your West Ham days, mentioned 10 years there, got your testimonial, a massive part of your career. It didn't end as nicely as you would have probably hoped. Do you look back on your time at the end of West Ham with any regrets at all on your behalf?
Only that game, only that day, and the last maybe year when I was in the side, then out the side, because I knew I was good enough and I should have been in the side, but maybe it was a couple of people that were just holding me back, and even the lads in the side were saying, oh, "Why aren't you in the side?" But I was, that last season I had to stay because it was my testimonial year. I'd given 10 years to the club. I wasn't going to get that kind of money from a transfer move, and I deserved that testimonial year. Although they did try to move me out the year before, just before that. I said, no, I'm staying. I'm honouring my contract. My contract was a 4-year deal with a testimonial at the end of it. So, I was being honourable, so they had to be honourable as well. And then when I was promised a 2-year contract, maybe a month or two before the end of the season, I thought, oh, that's good. I'll stay with the club for another 2 years and I can repay that debt. There's no testimonials at the end of it. I'll just be on a normal wage. And then to be told on the day of testimonial that, oh, we're not signing you now, that was the one regret with the club. But listen, I don't hold that against the club now. No way. There's certain people, but not the club. The club is a great club and always will be.
What did that mean for you to get a testimonial? 10 years serving that club that you clearly still now are very passionate about and clearly love. What was it like for yourself to have that testimonial, that game for you?
It was great. It was kind of the crowd was lightened because we had to play it the day after we played the last Premier League game of the season. So you can imagine 32,000, and then you're not going to get another 32,000. So I was kind of done up in that respect as well because I wanted it in the middle of the season, but they never afforded me that luxury. But I'll always be appreciative of I think it was eight to 10,000 that turned up on that day. But it was great, because it was a culmination of a year's work. In that I'd had race days, ladies' nights, dog nights, golf days, things like that. And I had a hard-working testimonial committee, which that day was a thank you to not just me, but from me to my testimonial committee and my family who worked hard that season.
You mentioned a moment ago as well, that last season being out of the team when you felt like you deserved to be in the team, you feel like you was good enough to be playing week in, week out. What are those frustrations like when you feel you've got that ability to still play at a good level, but you're not getting an opportunity?
Yeah, it was terrible. But then I got back in the team, and I couldn't. They didn't. No one could displace me. So I proved them wrong in that respect anyway. And when I was let go, obviously you'll come to it, but I was let go, and I was playing in the Blackburn first team for the first half of the next season. So I proved to certain people that I was in every way good enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll come on to it right now. So obviously your contract had ended with West Ham. They had retracted the 2-year offer that they said to you was on the table, and you went to Blackburn Rovers. Kenny Dalglish, first of all, start with Kenny. What's he like to work for?
Great. I mean, I'd only played against Kenny, obviously, when he had that great partnership with Ian Rush at Liverpool. So I played against him quite a few times, but I didn't know him, personally. Obviously, congratulating each other at the end of games and things like that. But when I went there, he was everything I thought he would be, a really humble man. Very similar to Billy Bonds, Bobby Moore, Georgie Best, the best in football, all those guys. They are humble people, and they never go on about past glories. They're always in the present, what they're doing at the present, and people around him. And he didn't let me down at all. He was everything I hoped he would be, and he was.
We don't see an awful lot of footballers who are at the very top of the game when they're playing come out to be at the top of the game as managers. What made Kenny stand out from the rest?
Well, the thing when you come out, he was player manager at Liverpool, actually, when he won the title, didn't he? So that was a job that he couldn't refuse, I think. He couldn't refuse that job because those jobs don't come around just like that. So he kind of got it thrust upon him. So he was learning on the hoof, so to speak. But then after that, obviously, when you are a great player, you've got the instant respect of your teammates. But then you've got to divorce your teammates from yourself and make decisions that sometimes can hurt the ones that you've played with. That couldn't have been easy at Liverpool. He didn't have any teammates at Blackburn. He was just a manager. But it's all okay having the respect of players, which he did. But then you've got to have that respect as a manager. And he did that as well because he made difficult decisions and he did them humbly and he did them honestly. He was very good to deal with.
To be from a player to a manager, say, a year or two after you've been playing, have you got to have some sort of like mentality switch to change your persona for your position?
Yeah, I remember having a chat with him, and I said, should the situation arise, he said, take it, just take it. Don't think about it, just jump into it. I never did because the radio thing come up before, but it was quite interesting having that chat because he must have jumped into that situation at Liverpool thinking, am I good enough to do this or am I not? And he certainly was. He was up to it. He was up to the fact that he could make decisions and make them for the right thing. The right thing was for the team and for the football club. And I think that's what everybody respected him for because he would say, this is decision for the football club. It's not personal or whatever. If you were left out the team or anything had happened, he would make decisions for the football club. Good decision maker, really good man.
You won a Premier League title at Blackburn Rovers, 35 years old. The the pinnacle of football, really. Every footballer wants to win the Premier League title, or any English footballer at least want to win the highest achievement in their country. What was that like for you? What was that feeling like?
It would have been better if I was on the pitch. I have to be honest about that. But that second half of the season, my job role had changed within the club, and but to have earned the medal, played enough games to have earned it. I think it was about 18 games or something. Then that felt really good. That felt couple of fingers up at certain people, and also more importantly, it was better for my family, and it was better personally for me. I can't can't hide the fact that when you win the Premier League, first of all, it's wow, it's me, it's all about me. But then you realise about all the other people around you that it's affected as well, and that was the great thing. Everyone being so happy for me and me for them as well.
After Blackburn, you carried on playing. You went on Crystal Palace, Maidenhead United. I see a little spell down there. When you retired, was it easy for you to retire at that point, or do you wish you retired any earlier, or just you carried on a bit longer?
Well, I could have carried on a lot longer, but when I was at Palace, I'd signed, and I'd sort of broke my ankle, so I'd signed injured, and they was hoping for me to recover. So they was taking a little bit of a risk taking me on, but it took me so long to recover, and in the end, I could only sort of play on one leg. I couldn't spring off the other one. So trying to change the whole game around for that was impossible. Although they were in the Championship, it was difficult. So I elected to, not play anymore, hang the boots up. And when I hung the boots up, Alan Devonshire called me up and said a one-legged me was better than a two-legged whoever playing for Maidenhead. And would I be player assistant manager with him? And to be honest, in that 15 months, I had probably one of the most fun times in football that I've ever had. They won a trophy. First time they'd won in 50 years. Dev was manager, I was assistant. I was hobbling around, but in the end, I had to pack it up. And, I think it was my mate from school said, "What the hell are you doing? Limping around like that. Your ass is getting fatter. You want people to remember what you were, not look at you now." And I'd had an offer from the radio to go full time, and I decided that was the time to do it. That was the time. Hang the boots up and permanently, and then go on the radio and pick up the mic and hang up the boots.
You mentioned you had some of the best times and some of the best fun at Maidenhead. Was that because there wasn't any pressure on you? You'd achieved everything you'd already achieved, and it was a case of you having a bit of fun.
Yeah, it was fun, and it was great to help non-league players as well because I made their training fun. I think they were used to non-league trainers just running the cobblers off them every Tuesday and Thursday night, playing on a Saturday. But whereas I could technically go and coach them and try and make them better players. And if you talk to some of those guys at the time, and they're still friends, they'll say, "God, I really enjoyed that coaching with you. We learnt a lot, and off with you and Alan at the time." And because I took over more or less the coaching role of it, and on all the little technical bits. So you're helping people along. And if I see them boys now, I see them at a Maidenhead game, obviously they've all retired now, but they all went, "Oh, what a great time we had. What a great time."
You mentioned as well, after that, you went into the radio, you went into your punditry, your TV side of things as well, Sky Sports, etc. How much have you enjoyed doing that side of work since you have hung up your boots? Do you miss playing, or has that fulfilled that gap in your life?
Well, you miss playing, but nothing fills that gap because even when you're watching, you think I can do that, but obviously you're too old, too fat, and too slow or whatever. But it was great going into radio because I was then part of another team, and I was in part of another media team on Capital Gold. It was all bossed by Jonathan Pearce, who was he's one of the best radio commentators ever. I become his little henchman, but alongside him, his co-commentator, and we had a great double act on the radio for 7 years. But incorporated in all that was a lot of reporters and presenters that have all gone on to make it on different things, but in Sky and BT and things like that. But they all remember those radio days because we worked hard. And when they got on the TV, it became that easy because you don't do as much work as what you've done. You've done the hard yards in radio, but I'm talking about now, James. I started trying to tie it up the other day, and I've done over. I'm so lucky. I think I've done over 2,000 live games. Been at over 2,000 live games, from the World Cup finals to Division Two games. But when you're watching all those games, obviously you get an eye for it, and you become a little bit of a judge for it. So I love it, absolutely love it. Now that's without the games that I go and watch normally. So I think I'm a football athlete, mate. I've got it bad, haven't I? I've got a football twitch.
Not a bad thing, not a bad thing. Tony, in terms of, you mentioned there over 2,000 games, and again, I can see, just how passionate you are about these and about working football and going as a fan as well. What's your favourite memory from working punditry? What stands out for you?
The year Man United won the treble, they played in a semi-final against Arsenal at Villa Park, and it was one of the best games I commentated on. From the first opening of the game, when a parachutist tried to come onto the pitch to put the ball on the pitch on the halfway line, landed on the roof, unfortunately, and fell off the roof, and everybody couldn't believe it. Fortunately, he was okay, maybe broke a leg or something, but that was the start of what was a bizarre night. Bizarre night. Just went backwards and forwards, sending off Ryan Giggs' great goal. And then that was the trigger for United to win the treble that year. That was in the middle of it, winning that game against the Arsenal, obviously, that got them into the final. If that had gone the other way, then they don't win the treble. It was so close, that game. It was so close. But the game was between two really good sides, great sides. And it was just an honour and a thrill to, be there with the excitement, the atmosphere, the commentary, the way it went backwards and forwards, replaying the goals, replaying the sending offs, going through it. And that was probably the biggest buzz of the game. That was great. To play in it must have been incredible. I look at the boys on the telly now when they're doing their bits, guys that played in it. But, to actually commentating on it was great. That playing it, cool. What a buzz that was.
In terms of, again, commentating, well, this is a three-part question, this one. So who's the best player that you've commentated on? Who's the best player you've played with? And who's the best player you've played against?
The best player I've commentated on is Thierry Henry, because not at the start, but I saw him in his debut. I saw him score his debut goal away at Southampton when they decided to put him up front because he wasn't working on the wing. And I saw he changed from a boy to a man overnight. And by the time he'd left the Arsenal, he was just the best in the world, without a doubt. He just had a different gear. He made it men look like boys when he got beaten for pace. So that was the best player I commentated on. A lot of other ones, of course, Dennis Bergkamp, Gianfranco Zolas, all those kinds of players, but in the Premier League. But Thierry Henry was the standout. The best player I played with. I break that down into three parts, James. So I'll give you a bit of a three-parter. George Best at Fulham, Alan Devonshire at West Ham, Alan Shearer at Blackburn. So that's the three best players I played with because of different clubs. And the best players I played against was because football in strikers came in pairs at the time. So the best pair was Rush and Dalglish, without a doubt.
You mentioned Alan Shearer there, obviously the all-time top goal scorer in the Premier League. What was he like to have up front in your team when you know he's going to get you goals? Did that fill the rest of the team with confidence?
Yeah, you knew you could probably have a shit game, the rest of you, and then he might get away with it and score a goal, and we won the game. He was a game changer. He had a great partner, Chris Sutton, who's a good friend of mine, and deserves a special mention because he hardly gets one. It's always about Shearer that season. But Shearer was the best striker of the ball I've probably seen, in front of goal, just like a sledgehammer of a shot he had. Past goalies before they dived. And he had such a confidence and an aura about himself, and he genuinely put the fear of God into centre-backs. He was that physical, backed into them, got above them, wasn't the biggest, but whatever he had with his power, he made the best of. And he was an expert at giving you a little nudge at the right time, making a yard. And when he got that shot away, it generally ended up in the back of the net.
You also mentioned Thierry Henry. Is he the best player to ever play in the Premier League era?
I think so. I look at it, and even now I look at players, and I think Thierry Henry, when he was at his peak, like, you just, as a commentator, you just wanted him to get the ball because you knew he'd do something. You know, flick it up and volley it, beat players for pace, go on solo runs, curlers with left foot, curlers with right foot. He just had everything in the armory. Probably not the best header of the ball that I've seen, but he just had the lot. You know, and if you was an Arsenal fan, you were lucky, you know, that someone like Thierry Henry had come along during that time, because to watch him week in, week out, well, he deserves a statue there. They should have done a statue of him as the old ground. I think he's that good, you know.
Absolutely. And so, last question from me, Tony. A big talking point this season, throughout the season, has been VAR. Do you think VAR and the people who are operating VAR have improved or hindered the game?
Improved. And I honestly say that. We forget the mistakes that were made before VAR, when players were yards offside. But at least up to recently, it's been black or white, whether you're offside by a nose, or a shoulder, or a knee, or a foot. And goal line technology has improved the game, because we've seen goals that weren't over the line given as goals, and the other way around, vice versa. But VAR, I think on certain things we've got to say no. I would go on offsides, yes, but the fouls, I think it's got to be at the discretion of referees, because when you see a frozen frame of a tackle, it looks so much worse than when you see it in real time. If you see it in real time, as a commentator, I try and call it, oh, that was naughty, he meant that, or that was just a rash challenge, or it's a player that doesn't normally do it, like Curtis Jones, who tries to put his foot over the ball, not top someone, but tried to put his foot over the ball and got it wrong. So the VAR generally has made the game better for me, although the response time should be quicker. And of course, they made that mistake the other day. But let's go back. How many mistakes were made? And if we took VAR away now for the offside, and we went back to what we were, they wouldn't stop arguing. They'd still be drawing lines on the telly and going, he's offside, and people forget yards were in it, yards offside. So I think it's got to be that the guys behind it are under a lot of pressure. They're probably under more pressure than the referees when they call them over to the screen. So I think we've got to brush it up, fine tune it. They've got to be more trained to do it, but it's made it better. Is that a good answer for you, James, or have I just gone around the houses?
No, fantastic, Tony. Lovely. Well, again, I want to thank you very much for your time, Tony. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And again, we'll have the book, That's Entertainment. It's out now at all retailers.
Cheers, James.